I asked you before, Joe. Don't call me that. Call me Francine. Those strange horizontal frown lines appeared on her face, and together with the faint pimple scars that were perfectly lined up above her brows, they reminded Joseph of the tiny perforation holes used to tear and separate paper. That's how you introduced yourself to me, he said. That's all I've ever called you. You couldn't stand the name Francine. What's the big deal? He looked over the stained and pitted coffee cup that was halfway to his mouth and willed the truth from her. He didn't think she actually lied to him, but she sure could keep a secret. So what? That was then. Back then when I didn't want you to get close. I gave you my street name, my nickname. But now, well, now we're close, and I want you to think of me as the person I am, not the person I was. But I didn't know the person you were. I only know who you are now, and I know you as Fancy, and I love you as Fancy. Francine is just a name to me. Well, if that's just a name, then you'll get used to it. But why should I have to? Look, Joe, that was then, this is me now. In the near future, I'm not gonna have to ask nobody if they want to supersize that or if they want an apple pie. I won't have to give a damn if it's for here or to go. I ain't gotta say, there ain't no bathroom or we don't have a public restroom either. I won't have to say Theater 3, second floor, or second door on the left. No damn more. She took a breath dramatically, as if swinging into her next act. I'll be saying stuff like, "Good morning. My name is Francine Foote, and I'm here to wire your computer network. Where do you want the services?" Fancy sounds like a stripper's name. Now, how would I look, especially built like I am, all breasts and hips, saying, "Hi, my name is Fancy, and I'm going to get down on my hands and knees and crawl around under your desks." Huh? Which sounds better, more professional. I can't be calling myself Fancy no more. They're going to doubt me anyway because I'm black. And a woman. Fancy Foote. I need to be taken seriously. You mean Willoughby, don't you? He threw the question out casually, hoping for a serious answer. That would make 8, or was it 80 proposals? He'd first asked her to marry him 5 months after they'd met at the electronics supply store. He'd been checking out digital cameras, teasing his hobby of photography, and she watched him so intensely that he shifted his attention from the sales clerk to her. "Do I know you?" he'd asked. That was the first time he'd seen that frown. "Well then, do you think you know me? What are you looking at? Why are you watching me?" "I'm wondering what you're going to use that for, specifically." He could tell she was really expecting an answer. She didn't look crazy. And even though she wasn't the prettiest woman in the store, she looked really good in her black skirt and tight blue sweater. But Joseph hadn't bothered to answer, just turned away and continued grilling the salesman. The woman had sucked her teeth slow and loud, but hadn't moved away, except to shift from one foot to the other, advancing a couple of inches closer. When Joseph left the store with his camera under his arm, his thoughts returned to the woman with the plushy-looking breasts and the big teeth. Why'd she think she could just stare him down like that? Half a block later, he decided to ask her. He went back and found her at the cashier. "What so interested you," he started when he was within shouting distance, "that you had to stand around and watch me by a camera?" Francine had looked at him and nodded, counting out $7.98 in singles, dimes, and pennies. He looked like the men she was familiar with, in jeans and an oversized Knicks jersey, but his hair was all wrong. Barbershop neat, lined edges, and he needed eyeglasses. They weren't sunglasses for style, even though they'd shaded to a dark green. Your questions were so detailed that I figured I could learn something if I just took the time." She closed her change purse with a loud snap and buried it deep in a big backpack. She'd smile and said thank you to the cashier, but when she turned back to him, her smile was gone. "What interested you so much you had to come back and ask me?" She'd started out the door, and he followed. And even after 3 years, Joseph still didn't understand all of what Fancy really wanted. Why she worked so hard, but never seemed to have any money. Or now, why was she moving from her studio to a 2-bedroom apartment without him? "I'm not ready to get married just yet, Joe." She reached across the table and pinched his cheek, as if he were a child to be lured through the grocery store with promises of candy at the checkout. "I told you I have something to do first." She said this lightly, cheerfully, as she always did. Her wide mouth spread a good 2 inches wider as she gave him that lips-closed smile that was as good as a locked door. It was part of Fancy's nature to keep setting goals, and that was fine, one of the things he liked about her. But when was she going to trust him enough to tell him about them? When LaShayla woke up to go to the bathroom, it was dark and quiet. Well, maybe not so dark. If she turned her head, she could see the red glow of the sign on the wall over the door by Kim's bed. And maybe it wasn't so quiet either. She could hear the sounds from the outside. That was a car, and that was a bus, and that was a truck, and some more cars. Talking and yelling, gunshots from Juanita's TV too. She liked the sounds that were loud and then soft. Something scary happened, and then a lot of people talked about it. The scary parts had woken her up before. LaShayla sat up, pushed her short, chubby legs off the bed, and slid down to the floor on the side away from the door. That was important. She was glad she remembered. Mrs. Logan talked about going the extra mile, and that meant she did everything the long way. Her wish would come true. She put on her new slippers, which were more fuzzy pink tops than squishy white bottoms. Mrs. Logan had given them to her yesterday when she gave stuff to everybody in a big black plastic bag Miss Juanita found by the door. The slippers were too big, but Mrs. Logan said that didn't matter. She should wear them anyway. LaShayla walked slowly between the rows of cots, picking up and putting down each foot carefully. Trying to control the slippers, she wouldn't make so much noise. Juanita didn't like noise. Maria rolled over and grabbed for her doll, Mush Mush. Mush Mush was on the floor. LaShayla picked Mush Mush up and put her back against Maria's chest. Maria's arms and legs curled around her doll. Maria was only 2 years old, and she needed Mush Mush. When LaShayla was little, she slept with her doll too. But now she was a big girl, and Mommy Baby lived on the shelf over her bed. She only came down when LaShayla really needed her. LaShayla hadn't slept with Mommy Baby at all since she started waking up to go to the bathroom. And Mommy Baby looked kind of lonely. On the shelf was only her picture of a house with 2 windows to keep her company. But before that, when she was little, she had slept with Mommy Baby every night and never let her fall on the floor. When a real Mommy Lady came and picked her, then she and real Mommy Lady and Mommy Baby would go to live in a house with 2 windows. Lamar went, and so did Kiana and Marshawn and Kelvin. Soon it would be her turn too, when a real Mommy Lady picked her. "Good night, children. See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow," yelled Ashley, abandoning her alphabet puzzle to throw herself towards Mrs. Logan's knees. Her 2 blonde ponytails and startling blue eyes making her look just like the doll that she thrust up at Rebecca Logan. "Kiss goodnight, kiss goodnight." "Oh, I almost forgot, didn't I?" "But you know I'd never forget you, Ashley. I'd get all the way to the car and turn right back around just to give you and baby Kathy a kiss." Mrs. Logan bent down and put her arms around 18-month-old Ashley. "First a big hug," she said, and Ashley's stubby little arms tried to encircle Mrs. Logan's head. "She still can't get that hugging thing down to the right level," said Juanita, as she moved around the room picking up toys and straightening the miniature tables and chairs. Rebecca knew when she got back tomorrow morning that the children would all have been fed, bathed, and put to bed, with little disobedience and no tears. The children were getting used to Juanita, and Rebecca was glad. Rebecca was glad to have found her. She was a lot cheaper than Darla, but wasn't as motherly. Darla had been with her for years, but recently she'd started asking a lot of questions, and bugging her for a raise in pay. Juanita was a little nosy, though, and Rebecca had started locking the file cabinet, something she hadn't done for years. "But isn't she precious? She's just the cutest thing here." Mrs. Logan gave Ashley a long, noisy kiss. "Now, Catty, Catty." Ashley pushed baby Kathy at Rebecca's face, knocking her glasses around toward her ears. "Easy, Ashley," Juanita cautioned. "Be gentle." "Oh, it's all right. Leave her alone, Juanita." "She's so sweet. Aren't you just the sweetest little angel?" "Okay, there's a big kiss for baby Kathy. I'll see you tomorrow." Rebecca adjusted her glasses and struggled to stand up. "See you tomorrow," Ashley yelled at her again. "Yes, bye-bye, sweetie. And Juanita, take what's left of the turkey off the bone so they can have turkey sandwiches for lunch tomorrow." "Yuck, turkey!" Justin was on the floor in front of the TV, rolling a Hess oil tanker truck between his thin brown thighs. "Justin sure doesn't like turkey." "Justin sure doesn't like turkey," Juanita said. She was not looking forward to getting him to eat his dinner again tonight. "No, but who cares? It's that or nothing for him. Have a good night." "Oh, and I have a 9:30 appointment with Ashley tomorrow, so make sure she's in a good mood." She heard the door being locked and bolted behind her as she went down the steps, knees groaning in protest. She shouldn't have squatted like that to hug Ashley, but lifting her up was difficult too. "I'm getting too old for this," she thought. But tomorrow could be my lucky day. If that nice couple from East 63rd Street wanted Ashley, and she was sure they would, she'd be up $40,000. But Justin and the others, they were a problem. At best, she'd clear maybe 7 or 8 thou each, if she could move them. But nobody wanted black children, and she just couldn't make enough off of them. When she did find a taker, they just sat around taking up space. It took 2 or 3 Ashleys to support the rest of the little black bastards. But what could she do? She couldn't say no. When her agency name came up on the list, she had to take whatever child was next. With Ashley gone, she'd concentrate on Maria. She wasn't really white, but she had very, very light skin, and her hair wasn't that curly. Oh, who was she kidding? It was curly and would only get worse. I'll have to get Juanita to give her a reverse perm. Darla did one on Isabella, and it came out beautifully. Although she'd said it'd grow out curly again, but by then the brat was gone and the check had cleared. Maybe I'll change Maria's name, give her something with a little more dignity, like Elizabeth or Sarah. She's too young to know she's Puerto Rican, and I'm too old to keep this up much longer. Where have you been? Just where the hell have you been, Rebecca? I've been waiting for you for over half an hour. Ralph was sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. Rebecca saw the glowing tip of his cigarette suspended near where his mouth would be. She imagined the bottle of vodka beside him and the cut crystal glass from the set her mother gave them balancing precariously on his knee. Why couldn't he just use a regular glass and put it on the table? I'm not late, Ralph. This is the time I always get home on my early nights. You know that. She thought about leaving the door open, leaving her pocketbook on her shoulder. The kitchen table had seen better days. It and the 6 chairs, now reduced to 3, had been a smooth as glass mahogany dining room set when they'd bought it 20 years ago. But after being shunted around almost yearly for the first 15 years, the table was scarred and scratched, and it didn't stand as firmly as it had before. What do you mean? I know that. Don't try to tell me what I know. You think you're so much better than me, and don't you ever hang up on me again. He got up just as she turned on the light and was disoriented by the glare. Thick, dark hair fell over his forehead. She liked it at this stage best, right before he'd get a haircut. A little long, the strands of gray documenting his adventures, echoing his eyes. He was slim and fit, yet the suit that she was still paying for was creased in all the wrong places. Tomorrow she'd take it to the cleaners. Ralph, I was just saying it's about 6:30 now. Usually you're at the restaurant at this time of the evening. How'd it go today? She eased herself down on the soft but not quite saggy faded blue couch and put her feet up on the coffee table, watching, fascinated, as the crevices of anger, tension on Ralph's face seemed to evaporate. Hey, Becky, yeah, look, I'm sorry. I'm just all keyed up and a little on edge is all. He rushed to sit close to her, throwing a pillow to the floor so he could snuggle his right arm around her shoulders. He cradled the glass of vodka in his left hand and began rolling it around on her cheek. Not Ashley, she thought. Not Ashley. I know he'll want her. She's the plumpest. But I'm not willing to make a 40,000 investment in that place. He'd be doing me a favor if he took that damn Justin. But he won't want him. Too old, too skinny. But I've got to keep Ashley. And I'd better hold on to Maria too. That leaves LaShayla. She's young enough, still has her baby fat. There's Reuben too. I always forget about him. He's so quiet. He's not too big, not too skinny. Ralph will say the others are too old, I'm sure. So that's it then. LaShayla or Reuben, whichever, I don't care, so long as it's not Ashley or Maria. Rebecca pulled away some so she could look her husband in the eyes. Ready. Look, honey, I need a child. Tonight. His voice was steady, although his hand trembled on the back of her neck. No. He traced a slow circle at the pulse point just under her ear, right where he knew his kiss touched her heart. No, I said. She breathed deeply and regularly, putting her 2 meditation classes to use, trying to control her stress. I have a business too, Ralph, and you're cutting into my profit. What profit? I'm reducing your liabilities, you mean. You ought to thank me. He tried a small smile, but her eyes wouldn't let him enlarge on it. Look, honey, when the restaurant takes off, you can close shop, he said, bringing the vodka to her lips, offering her a sip. I know you're not feeling good these days. Her lips parted involuntarily, accepting. Besides, you don't make that much anyway. Again, he tried to smile, but his words burned like rot gut. I've made enough to support us both for the last 10 years, she said quietly. She supposed it was the Catholic in her that made her start the negotiations this way. She'd given up 4 kids in 9 months and had found that pain was a quicker release than penance. She couldn't blame him, or she couldn't blame him alone. It was she who let 5-month-old Lamar slip under the bath water and drown. When Ashley fell and hit her head, it was she who panicked and bundled Lamar's dead body and took it home with her, telling Darla that he'd been picked up for a test weekend with prospective parents. And it was she, Rebecca Logan, of Logan's adoption agency, who calmed down when she realized in a very